What's up? You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs podcast, the show where I speak to bands about the other stuff they do when they're not playing or recording or being on tour. I got Jennie from Bad Cop here. Their new record, The Ride, is out now. Came out earlier this year on Fat Records, and she's an artist. She works over all kinds of different mediums, and she tells me all about that, as well as the jobs she's had in the past, how she's had to balance that and the band. And we talk about working in general, how to be a good employee without giving your boss everything. So cheers for listening. If you dig this podcast, if you like this episode, if you like the premise of the show, do let your friends know that it exists. We get more plays, means we get more guests. Sounds all right, doesn't it? East London's Signature Brew have been brewing music-inspired beers since 2011. They've made beers with Mastodon, Idols, Slaves, Sports Team, and a whole bunch of others. If you live in the UK, go onto their website, signaturebrew.co.uk. You can get beers delivered to your house, and with the voucher code 101podcast, you can get 10% off. All right, here's Jennie from Bad Cop. Go get their record, The Ride. It's great. It's out now. Cheers! Jennie, thank you so much for coming on 101 Part-Time Jobs. You're an artist, of course. What kind of stuff are you enjoying making right now?
Kind of whatever people need. I studied illustration, but I'm not really a digital artist, you know? I'm more like three-dimensional, analog, made with hands, only one copy. So I do a lot of like commissioned like portraits of people's pets, and like kind of fell into a weird niche of making like sculpted wedding cake toppers for people.
Sculpted wedding cake toppers?
Yeah, so...
That's a niche market.
One thing I've learned is that people are really into something that they've seen before, which like is, I think, sometimes frustrating as an artist when you're like, don't you want something totally new? And most people are like, no, that scares me. I want something I've seen that I know I can trust. So the funny thing is, like, someone will see something and then just want almost the exact same thing. And this is true with cakes and paintings and wedding cake toppers and album covers. Like, anything I've done for money, if people liked it, someone will want another one, at least one.
So people have seen what you've already done, and they want that same again for, you know, a second time.
Yeah. So in my mind, I was like, oh, it's like the Noah's Ark rule. Like, you're always going to make two of everything because someone's going to see it and want another one. But like, I think it's just about safety and like the limits of imagination that people kind of put on themselves.
Completely. And I see that in myself as well. Even though like I really dislike everything that comes with capitalism, I'm definitely a product of capitalism, you know?
It's inescapable. Yeah.
Like, you go out to the shop and you're like, oh, I think I'd look good in that. And that all of a sudden becomes that day's priority, even though you know that it's bullshit.
Right. I don't need this. Yeah.
Right. Of course you don't.
That's my favorite thing about COVID and the pandemic is, like, for me, like a grinding halt to seeing things and wanting them, especially with like clothing. I just really I don't hate the fashion industry. I just think it's so utterly wasteful to like pretend that there's something wrong with the clothes that you're wearing, and to like have to purchase something new just because someone said, now we're doing this.
Right.
I mean, it happens with like home goods too, but I just feel like with a lack of shopping as we used to know it, and, you know, public appearances as we used to know them, I feel like that's finally cool.
It's pretty fascinating, and like, it's like that Spider-Man pointing at the other Spider-Man 7 times meme, because as like a fan of punk rock, we like these left-wing ideals, and we like this kind of independent thought, right? Yet so many of us dress the same.
Right. Oh my God. Tell me about it. We just had a new record come out, and it's different. And like, a lot of the interviews I did, people were like, I'm not sure if this is punk. And I was like, what an absurd question for you to be even speaking.
Someone said that. Someone said, I'm not sure it's punk.
Multiple people. This album's not really punk. What do you have to say about that? And I was like, ask yourself what you have to, you know, like,
right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess it comes from a place like, so for example, say like the ubiquitous Descendants t-shirt, right?
Oh, yeah.
That comes from a good place, and there's a lot about that band that a lot of us have taken huge inspiration from.
Hmm.
So it's not a bad thing necessarily, but I think maybe we kind of have to check ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand that, like, not everyone is operating from this perspective of wanting something new. And even myself, sometimes, like, I think I want something new and I think I'm open-minded. And then sometimes some ideal will come that's like so foreign to me that I'm like, no. And then 2 days later, it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, okay. I'm open to that.
Right.
But, we're all just kind of creatures of habit.
For real. I think especially in social circles, you'll be introducing your friend and you'll be like, this is my friend who's parties super hard, or who's my friend who loves math. I think we're quite guilty of putting people in boxes, especially ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But having records released on Fat Records, did that make you? I mean, I know all three of the full lengths have been on Fat Rec, haven't they?
Yes.
Being on such an established label with such a kind of household name, did that? I mean, with hindsight, looking back into 2015, did that make you look at yourself in a certain kind of way, or perhaps a little bit differently to how you saw yourself before that?
Totally. I felt legitimized, because I'm not trained really in any way musically, and it's always been a very like intuitive, cathartic, self-taught kind of process where I also kind of never expected anyone else to listen to it.
Yeah.
And then that definitely changed, and the way that I write music has changed also just as a product of that. Like, for one thing, knowing that someone is going to listen to it, and also knowing that I'm going to be repeating this almost like a mantra nights in a row for months of a year has changed what I write about and the position that I write from, because just knowing like I'm going to have to really live with it and live in it and be accountable for it. Like I don't write songs that are sort of angry or mean anymore. Whereas like I totally did that before, because it was like, I'm writing for myself to process something, and like, it's not a diary anymore. You know what I mean? Like, this is published. So I'm kind of grateful for that in a way, because like, I think I've learned to take what I create a little more seriously and treat it more like a manifestation, and have decided in the time since our first records came out to only make positive creative contributions anymore.
That's interesting.
Yeah. For my own, because I can't answer for like just mean stuff. Like, I wrote this song called Asshole and people love it because it's like short and stupid, but it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like the asshole. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not mad at those people anymore. I don't care. I can't do that. I can't stand by it. So
it's always funny, like, writing songs. I mean, I guess it applies probably more to like when you're younger, because you're so spontaneous with it. Yeah. And you'll say stuff that maybe you wouldn't have said at a later time.
Oh God. Yeah. And now we live in this era of like, I'm not shitting on cancel culture, but it's just like, there's like scrutiny and accountability, which I think are good, but it's just like, I know I've said and done things that I already don't agree with. And like, knowing that like, hey, everyone, you're on the record. Like, if it's on the internet in any way, you're on the record. Mm-hmm. Now it's kind of like makes you think a little harder about what you're doing.
For real. And it's struggling because I don't want to say the word but. I kind of want to say, and we've all done stuff that we wouldn't do again. We've all done stuff that's hurt somebody.
Oh, yeah.
That's growing up.
Yeah. True. But I'm 37 years old. It's just like, I don't know. I think about younger people whose whole lives are like documented on the internet. Like, what a wild reality. Like, my life existed before that, personally. Yeah. Thank God. Somebody could upload things, but still, it's like, oh my God, if I had to answer for everything I did as a teenager too, Jesus, I couldn't.
We just got to be happy that MySpace doesn't really exist anymore, and you can't really access that because I don't know.
Yeah, gross. Some Russian, like, we found the archives. Everyone's in trouble. Your razor bangs are on the internet.
So starting like a fairly, I hesitate to use the word serious, but organized, starting an organized band when you're in your 30s. What was that like looking back on it?
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks for considering it organized. We we have become organized, you know. We have to file taxes together. So then we're like, oh shit, we're a family business now. So everyone better whip smart,
Wow.
get into shape.
Yeah.
I mean, when we started, it was just fun. You know, and then it was like, oh wow, everybody's like putting a lot into it. But it was definitely like, we're just having fun and getting free drinks and taking short tour vacations for the sake of partying. And then it, you know, it took off. No one I think ever really meant for this to be what it is. And then once we got the opportunity to share it with this signing to Fat and touring around the world, and, you know, just the opportunity it was like we moved into a bigger pot that way. And then it was like, well, we should step into this and grow up and, you know, work a little harder and see what we can do. And yeah, so it was unintentional, but I'm glad that that you think we tried from the beginning. We were having fun. So
it's funny because I mean, once you get to a certain stature or a certain kind of professional level of being in a band, once like the history books looks like it was always that way, you know.
I know, hindsight is so funny.
Did it take over your illustration work then?
Well, so when we were touring all the time, I was like pretty hard up for money, because that's tough. I mean, and I know I needed to like adapt my freelance practices and like figure out a way to make money while we were on tour. And I just hadn't figured it out yet. So that just meant like when we were home, I was working as hard as I could. I was working at this bakery, which was super fun, but like I had no boundaries. I mean, they would like text me at 10:30 at night when I'm supposed to have a day off for the first time in like many weeks, and be like, oh, can I get this at like 8 in the morning tomorrow? And it's like, Jesus. I mean, that means I have to be there at 5, and that was going to be my day off. Like,
yeah,
you know, okay, like what is sleep? What is my life? I am a fucking husk and I just bake cakes. You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy. And then like I wouldn't, you know, we were still playing at home, which is brutal. Like the late night band schedule and the early bakery schedule was just like grinding me into like a pulp. Anyway, I didn't have time for any freelance between all of this. And I decided, I was like, I don't make art anymore. And I really would like to get back to that and like connect with my creativity and have a little more control and autonomy and like, you know, maybe benefit more from like the pricing. Whereas like when I was at the bakery, it's like, it doesn't matter what you do, you're getting an hourly rate, even if you're like handing over tons of intellectual property, and like that was not being respected. I was just like, what? I'm giving everything to this and just getting an hourly rate. And like, I think I'm worth more than that. And also I know we're going to be gone all year. So I just made a decision to leave, which seemed a little silly because I quit in February, and then we went on 2 weeks of a great tour, and then the whole world shut down. And then I came home and was like, oh, did I make a mistake? But I really ultimately don't think that I have, because I've been freelancing since then and like have been really healthy and like really happy with that decision. So I'm happy to be back into making art. And even though everybody's like, oh, my budget's tight, I don't really want that dog painting that I called you about 6 months ago, but some people do, you know.
So it was just before lockdown that you quit the bakery?
Totally.
Wow. And what you said about them like calling you 10 at night, like we've all had jobs where, you know, it's kind of funny because you don't want to make someone feel like they're not doing, you know, loads of stuff with their free time. But say if you are in a band or you do illustrations or you have this kind of big hobby that's definitely something more than a hobby, it's easy to work with people who don't have that, who in turn will, like you said, call you at 10 at night. And I feel like that's almost like a common culture in the workplace.
Unreasonable expectations of employee-employer relations. Like, I'm sorry, I thought it was just an American thing, but you know.
No way. No, it's totally not. I mean, you see it in kind of everything, you know, from like Friday evening drinks. You feel kind of awkward. And well, the thing is, right, you wouldn't feel awkward if it wasn't your fucking boss. If it was anyone else being like, hey, do you want to hang out this Friday? if you had plans, you could happily say no. But because it's in the professional environment and we all have to make money, like you want to stay on the good side of your working colleagues and your boss because you know how fickle that can be.
Totally. And I mean, I said yes to everything I possibly could, even when it really made no sense for me for years there. And then was like being kind of like pressed up against by like other people there about like the judgment of my other job, which is the band. You know what I mean? Like there was this, like, we were getting into this dynamics of like semantics, and the band would be like, kind of disparaging bakery your whole life, and then the bakery would be like, what, you taking another vacation? I was like, it's not a vacation.
Right.
I'm trying to sell records. You know what I mean? Like, this is no one here is paying my health insurance, PS, so fuck both of you. But like, you know, back off, you know. Also, neither of you own me, you know. So like, really, this past 6 months has been like a time for me to like, you know, A, catch up on sleep, B, reconnect to my real work, which I feel I have like control over and independence within, and like it would grow into something where like I alone could benefit from this instead of basically being like a mule for some other entity. You know what I mean? Like, where it's like, okay, if I come in 7 days a week and work every holiday for the bakery, like I'm just Rumpelstiltskin here. You're going to want more straw from gold from me. This is like a relationship that we've made. I also felt like I couldn't say no to the band. I mean, everybody kind of did. We've talked about it since coming home and being like, let's just be a little more intentional and not, you know, be the handle of the whip and not the part that cracks. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be saying yes to everything. Like, we have had real health issues in the band, and like I feel like those maybe would have been lessened if we felt we had the right and the self-respect to say like, no, thank you, that doesn't really make sense for us. And I think we're there right now, which is so cool.
And it's hard because you don't want to say, if you're the person in the band who books practice every time, or you're the one who books the accommodation or the van, you fall into that role. So you can't stop doing that role once you've started. And like, similar to work, once you start a job, I've always kind of thought, I don't really want to work too hard for any of my bosses, because then the level of expectation will go up, and I'm like, fuck that.
No, I'm proud of you. That's like, I am a sucker for, well, I have in the past kind of fallen for like a lack of boundaries, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from language, but then also the expectation that you, I don't know, answer everything immediately, which is like one of my least favorite things about text messaging as a form of communication, is that many people expect that like, this means you answer me right now, or like, we've all heard people be like, oh, kind of shitting on someone for not answering, like, oh, I'm sure they're not busy. And it's like, how do you know what they are or are not doing?
Yeah. And I've been guilty of that, especially in the band situation, or like, say, like a small business thing. If you need an answer now, you're looking at like your friend and being like, you're checking their Twitter, seeing if they've tweeted in the last 10 minutes. And that's fucked up. No one wants to do that.
No, and really, I think just being aware of it kind of makes you stop, you know, like I've totally done it. This is just something that I've kind of like become mindful of. Mm-hmm. And like, it's just because it's like, you have to remember that everyone wants to be treated with respect also. And like, the way you start a culture of respect is by like treating people with respect.
Totally. So this podcast is obviously about part-time jobs and kind of side hustles to kind of keep you doing the thing that you want to do. But it's kind of turned into that dynamic of being in a band or being a musician, and how that evolves over time, but also how difficult it is.
Oh, it is. Well, and you said something interesting about once you become the person who books the accommodations, you cannot unbecome. But I have to say, in our band, well, we've been together for a long time, so maybe that's why. And everyone has really grown and changed a lot. But we've reassigned and renegotiated responsibilities for things like a few times. You know what I mean? And like kind of gotten remembering that, like, look, if this is too much, or like if someone is not maybe meeting the expectations of the group with this, like, we need to be able to have a conversation and be like, look, how can we change this? Do you need some help with this? Are you not in love with this position anymore? Like, what can we do? And like, just learning to that conversation is available as an option, and B, like also to set aside any defense, because a lot of times there is defensiveness when somebody needs help. They don't realize that like they can get it and that like, you know what I mean? Maybe like doing a job that's not meeting the standards or the needs of the group is not, you don't need to be offended when people are like, hey, this is like, the ball has been dropped. How can we, jump in? So it's become a really healthy business and workplace. It definitely didn't start that way, but that was because of like, people had substance abuse problems and like outside home and family problems, and like everyone's kind of on a journey of self-discovery, and like, right. we're all the best versions that we've ever been at this very latest edge of the time knife,
Yeah,
so.
Good to hear. And I think those hard conversations take so much guts.
Yeah, you have to be supportive too, and remember that like it's a safe space and that it's a team. People forget that so quickly,
Yeah.
So
have there been many like career upheavals in the band? Have any of the other members had jobs that have kind of been laid to waste by the band's activity?
I think they've been set down. I know Myra kind of cleared her plate for the band in many ways. Like, she was in several bands when we started and also was working, and then like she ended up losing a job because we were on some tours, and then decided to like take up very flexible part-time work, since then, which is cool. She's also married, and her partner is like fully employed, which I think, they kind of came to that agreement as a team, which is really cool.
Mm.
And then Lynn works full-time when we're home. And I think it's like, she is like such a valuable asset in any workplace, as far as like, she's very hardworking and like brings a lot of morale. And I think that they are aware of that. And so like a lot of times, like, when we leave on things, there's this like, I don't know, Lynn, we might, this might jeopardize things, but they always bring her back because she's badass. And then like, Stacy actually created a job for herself very recently, which is like amazing. She hadn't been really employed in like a traditional sense kind of for the majority of our band, but then she started this nonprofit with some friends called the Sidewalk Project, and it's been growing, and like they were able to do some grant writing and like hire some people from the street. They work with like the houseless population in Los Angeles. So they hired people full time from the street, from the community that they're helping. And they also were able to establish like a payroll for the volunteers that have been doing this full time. And Stacy is one of them. That's like so fucking cool.
Amazing.
I know. This is like very recent. She's like, can you believe it? I was like, I can. Let's wrap. Like,
that's so cool.
So happy for you. I personally left a job that was great, but also toxic about midway with the band. When we started getting busy, I kind of was like, this is an opportunity for me to be like, I am leaving because of this and not because of X, Y, and Z bullshit here. I ended up actually stepping into this job at that bakery. I just left super part-time under the pretense of like, I will be coming and going. And then we were together for so long. It was almost like an open relationship that's like gone on for 5 years. And then somebody's like, are we getting married or what? And it was like, no, we're not getting married. Like, this is still an open relationship. And that's all I wanted to be. And then I left. So.
Well, I think it's funny how jobs, I mean, I don't have an answer. I'm not claiming to have an answer, but it's funny how, there is this culture, like you said earlier. I mean, we see it all the time. People's bosses thinking they own them.
Oh my God. And like, if you don't follow up with that kind of like demand and expectation to like hand over the majority of your waking life without question, then like you're a bad employee. It's like, I am not a bad employee. I would be a really good salaried employee because I am very effective for a certain number of hours. And then like after, let's say 3 p.m., my brain gets soft and I just need a break, and like physical exercise affects my own personal performance. And like, I think the idea of clocking in and sitting down and being watched is sick,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
maybe if that is like the requirements of your job, but so many of my jobs don't really require that, you know? And like,
For real.
and I think a level of trust where like everyone works differently. Like some people do need to like sit down and put their seatbelt on for like these hours and then like step out of the room and be off the clock. But like, I think the fact that so many people have been able to or been forced to work from home during the pandemic, I'm hoping that that changes working for a lot of people and the planet.
I think one of the biggest problems, I mean, again, it's easy for us to point out problems in the system, but then like, that's what we're here for, right? I think one of the biggest issues is these jobs and these careers, they're coming from a place where they treat everyone exactly the same. In the same way that some people work better in bursts of energy. Other people are like, the long distance runners.
Right. No, and I think, honestly, I'm grateful for like the large corporations getting a chance to see that you can work this way and that you don't like, oh my God, if I had children or even I know children are not necessarily in school and I hopefully they're not. I know there are some places where they went back, but that's so scary. But like, you know what I mean? If you have like a kid that's not school age yet, I would way rather work from home. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Instead of
100%.
handing over your entire salary to another person to watch your child, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what?
Mm-hmm.
That's so fucked. That system is so unnecessary and so fucked.
Yeah. Childcare is so expensive. Not that I really know firsthand, but you don't need to know firsthand how expensive it is.
No, I don't know firsthand. And I am so sorry for you, parents. Like, that's brutal.
Right. And travel to work. I remember getting a couple of full-time jobs I had in the city, and I don't live far out from the city center, but it was still like I was spending hundreds on a month on travel. Ugh. And that should not come out of your paycheck.
No, it shouldn't. You know, if you're working from home, you're not costing a business rent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that maybe that portion of that rent should come back to you. I know that's asking a lot.
Yeah, they'll never fucking do that.
Hey, what an idea. Like,
I agree.
I'm saving you this money, like, you're welcome. Also, providing my own computer, you're welcome. Okay, if you want to leave a camera on or whatever it is, or like, I have a headset on and I'm literally available to you during the workday. If that makes you happier, like that's fine. But like, my housemate has a job where like she was working from home and then now she's kind of transitioning back to work. And she's really sad because she's like, she got really into these like radical at-home fitness classes. And she's like, how can I ask my boss if it's okay for me to like move my lunch break to 10 a.m. so I can do this? I was like, you just ask him. It's a small company. Like, I think that person has enough respect for you and what you do for them that wouldn't be an awkward conversation,
For real.
You can eat your lunch at your desk. You don't need to like go out and buy food anymore. Things are different now. Like,
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned earlier about, it's something that we don't understand here is healthcare. So, what are your experiences with healthcare? Have you paid for it separately or have you had an employer pay for it in the past?
I've literally never had an employer pay for my healthcare, which I think is interesting because I've been a full-time employee and a salaried employee in several contexts, not as many as others. I feel like I meet a lot of people who are like, I have to have this and this and this. And it's like, well, good for you. But I also know that like I'm asking for a lot by saying, hi, I'm going to come and go kind of a lot, and no, I'm not getting paid vacation. And I'm okay with that. Like, you just stop paying me when I go on tour. This is our arrangement. But I also am like a fucking incredible employee when I'm home and when I'm here. Like, you're getting at least a regular year's worth of work out of me in less time. I do not fuck around. This is like for real. This is like something I feel good about myself for. But then also, I worked for like a big action sports company and like they, even before I was touring, they were like, all right, here's our loophole. You're a contractor. You know what I mean? And that way we don't have to pay you this or that. And I was like, okay, that's not sick, but all right, I'll take the job, because I want to do this work. But then it, in the way it was like, you guys propped the door open and kind of let me know that like, you are not accountable to me. And therefore, like, I was I kind of leveraged that when it was like, I'm going on tour. And they were like, my boss was kind of like, no, you're not. You can't just go for 3 weeks. And I was like, I totally can. I don't have any paid vacation or healthcare. Like, smell you later.
Yeah.
You can call me, you know?
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I've always kind of paid for it myself. It's not cool. And I also like really try not to go to the doctor. And I'm really grateful for like this vessel that I have being pretty supportive and like hanging tight so far. I mean, knock on wood. But it's like I have the luxury of having kind of like a base level insurance plan. And I know that other people don't have that. You know what I mean? People with chronic illnesses or like real serious conditions. Like, and this is a luxury that maybe I will only have temporarily. Like, it's not lost on me. I think it's pretty wrong the way we treat people, especially now. It's like, okay, there's this health crisis and you're still not supporting other people's health. Like this model of like coronavirus is like really a manifestation of the idea that like there are no boundaries between yourself and anyone or anything else. Like if your neighbor has this, it's a problem for you.
Right.
It's not their problem. It's your problem now. You know what I mean? And the idea that like, even under this very literal interpretation of that, like other people's problems are definitely your problems and are definitely like your responsibility. Like our government is still vilifying words like socialism and socialized healthcare. And like, it's just incredible to me how brainwashed people are.
And where do you live?
I live in Southern California.
So what's your local, I mean, what have you seen locally in the last couple of weeks, especially with lockdown being sort of lifted? So you mentioned your housemates going back to work. Is that pretty common? It's
starting to happen. I'm seeing it. I mean, I'm at home, obviously, like I'm working from home. I'm seeing like less cars in the neighborhood during the day, which like, but I personally am not going out. So I'm living in my own sort of self-imposed bubble. I'm only going to band practice and the grocery store. And that's like pretty much it. But at the same time, like I'm thinking of like, God, what are the kids doing? And I live in Huntington Beach, which has like become sort of famous in the last few months for being like this really right-wing hotbed. I mean, there are decent people that live here, but like, I don't know. I'm not proud of that. Yeah. But it's like, I'm here, you know what I mean? Like my neighbors are here and they're cool. That's all I can tell you. You know, it's like, I don't know.
But you've been continuing band practice then?
We have, yeah. So we have like a quarantine pod kind of rule with the band. That's like who I'm seeing, and trying to remember that, like, you know, some friends are like, let's get together, and it's like, I love you so much, but like this is just not the time.
Yeah.
To see people I haven't seen in a long time. You know, like
right.
you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're all just like Lynn is going camping, and like she takes this whole thing very seriously. She's like, I'm getting a COVID test. And we got extra sites, so everyone's super spread out. So I'm going to be seeing people that like, no, I haven't seen them, but I'm not going to be close to them. We're going to be outside, and then I'm going to get another test when we get back before I come to band practice. Right. I was like, I appreciate you working this out and respecting our little dolphin pod here, cool, you know?
Cool. So the work you're doing now, and including kind of the wedding cake trinkets, have you got a name for the company?
I don't. I mean, it's just me. I tried to like, I'm really bad with names. Like, God help me if I ever have a child. I'm going to be like, all right, you're 4 years old. What do you want to call yourself? How do you feel? Yeah, so I'm just using my name for everything, which I realize is a problem because no one knows how to pronounce my name. But so yeah, my website is jenniecotterill.com, and then that's like my handle on Instagram. Only because, like, I find it confusing when people are like, oh, this is my business name. And it's like, fuck, right. I don't know that. Or I don't know your real name, you know?
Which happens a lot now that we've all got, like, a couple of handles on everything.
Handles, yeah. My favorite is, like, when someone uses an actual name in their handle and then you believe that is their name. Like, Lynn's partner's name is Bert, but his handle is like Hank Grit, and all people all over the world are like, tell Hank what's up. I'm all, okay. Like, I will. It's Bert, but okay.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So has business been all right then in the last few months? Has it been going up as you like establish your name and other people see what you've made for people they know?
You know what? It's been, I'm constantly like kind of wringing my hands and be like, is this the last thing? And then something always comes. Like I was doing a lot of baking from home, and like we had this like superstitious policy in my house where like we will get a box that's about the size of a cake that I could put a finished cake in to give someone. And like my housemate will be like, don't throw it away. You might get a cake. You know what I mean? And like it works. If you hang on to the box, someone will order a cake. And then, so that's magical. And then, you know what? It's just been kind of random. Like any random conversation I've been having with people seems to grow into like work, which is really fun and cool. I have a friend who's a witch, and like she was doing this like very cool thing for the full moon a couple weeks ago, and I just reached out to be like, hey, I really enjoyed that. Thinking of you all the time. Thank you. And she was like, hey, I need some help. I was like, sick. I would love to work for you. You know what I mean?
And I feel like if it comes from a good place, like a healthy place, you don't feel bad about plugging yourself because you're just talking about something that you like, right?
Really, it is genuine. It is not, I'm not like handing out business cards or like, I mean, I do know some people who do that, who like, they will reach out almost like, I'm like, did you set a timer? Just being like, let me know if you need any of this. And it's like, well, I will, you know,
Yeah.
This is your business practices and these are mine. But like, you know what I mean? I really fully operate on like a pretty organic freelance path.
Oh, and I've just seen you did the cover from the hepatitis bathtub, the NoFX book.
I did.
That's
that was
great.
Very silly.
The colors are really, they pop out, you know, more so than other illustrations.
Yeah. Well, they wanted, so Jeff Alulis was pretty heavily art directing that. That was, he wrote that with them, and he was like, are you familiar with like the little golden books? Which I really am. I'm actually kind of obsessed with them. I was like, yeah, I am. I'm all over it. You got it.
Golden books.
Yeah. So that's like, in the States, I think just after the Second World War, this publishing company, Golden Books, came out with like these very affordable children's books that they have an interesting business model. I can't remember. I was like really into it to the point where I researched it. But anyway, they were very accessible and like affordable. And the illustrations were always like, the inside of them would be one color and then black ink. And the cover would have these really fun gouache illustrations. And then this cute gold foil spine with like little illustrations on it, which is like the spine on that book is sort of a play on that. We couldn't do gold because Golden Books was like, no, you can't. But we played with it and made it like pink and put like a bunch of bondage stuff and pills on it instead of like all the cute kind of childhood illustrations that exist on the real version.
Yeah.
But it was like Jeff had this idea that like the irony of something so kind of classically loaded with like wholesomeness and children's books, juxtaposed with, the story of NoFX would be fun. So
great. Yeah. And it works so well.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. I love a good art director with like a good idea and a good vision. That's always like, all right, I'm happy to help. I'm just a hand.
Yeah, for real. And I suppose it's maybe something you find directions that you might not have found by yourself. A bit like the way like a producer you might work with.
Totally. Yeah, it is art production, huh? Yeah, I love that. I mean, sometimes it's fun to be like, someone just be like, do whatever you want. But also it's like, gosh, it's so much faster if you know what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just kind of here working it out for you.
I'm just looking at those wedding cake toppers now. I mean, what are they made out of?
They're made of a variety. Well, they're art materials, so like they'll last until they crumble into dust, which hopefully is like a lifetime.
Non-edible.
Yeah, that's a thing. I have done stuff like food cake toppers, which like that's fine. I kind of love making stuff out of food because it goes away and it's sort of like, you have to enjoy it right now. Like it sort of supports some environmental ethos that I have. And also like the idea that like you have to just enjoy it right now. Not everything is like something you can hang on to in your tight little fist. but then again, it's like a challenge. So those are made of like, clays and acrylic paint, and sometimes there's fabric or metal or wood, but it's like they're meant to be kind of forever. So a lot of them are like, sometimes the couple asks me for that, and then sometimes it's like the parents or people in the wedding party, or like just a wedding gift for the couple.
And did you kind of teach yourself to use those materials? Did you have any training?
Totally. I did go to school. I studied illustration at Cal State Long Beach, and I loved my education there, and like the way that program is like, or was, you could be sort of interdisciplinary about it. And like, I think I kind of pushed the limits of that. Like my teachers were sort of frustrated. They're like, really? You're taking a fucking mold making class? Like, how does this relate to illustration? And it was like, because you know what I mean? I want to work in 3D. Like I kind of made it work for me. And I still am making it work. I don't think I learned anything unnecessary while I was there, except for maybe like printmaking. Like I'm not so good at printmaking, and I don't use it because it requires planning that I don't really have. But yeah, I kind of, so throughout my education, I was always sort of experimenting with material, and before experimenting with materials, and like, sometimes things were a mistake, but like I love that. I love like learning about a new process or material, or talking to people that work with different things and just like trying to implement that. Or sometimes you come up on something or find something. Like I have sort of a twin star art friend out in Florida who I was visiting her after the fest, and she was doing this crazy build out for a place called the Pizza Cave, like making this cave into a pizza restaurant, or like a pizza restaurant into a cave. And like, she was like, yeah, let's come over and like, we'll smoke some weed and we'll like work on the stuff. And I was like, sick. I can't wait to see what you're getting into. 'Cause she's very experimental. And like, we have a lot of brief text conversations about like, have you ever worked with AB foam, or have you ever worked with this like weird metal stuff? How would I cut this? And like, so I just got down on someone else's project for a couple nights, and it's just so fun to
Yeah,
like,
awesome. It's
yeah,
collaboration, right? That's where like stuff comes from.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's told me stuff about, she's like, you got to get joint compound. This stuff is amazing. I was like, okay. You know what I mean? Like, I'll check it out. Or like, my favorite is like 2-part epoxy clay. Like you can get it at the art store for a lot of money, or you can find it in like the plumbing section, but that shit is amazing. Like.
Awesome. Are there any materials that you've yet to work with?
Well, I think when I was like a kid and like really looking at all the things I thought were cool and like fantasizing, like I love a mini golf course so much. I would love to make a mini putt. And I think when I was like falling in love with that as a kid, I was like, what is this made of? You know what I mean? My dad was like, this fiberglass, you know what I mean? Then I got really interested in fiberglass, and I've really never used it, but like I do hope to make a mini golf one day, and I do hope to employ fiberglass. But maybe what I would probably use now is like more found materials. Fiberglass is pretty toxic,
right?
And like dangerous, which is like I care more about that now than I probably ever did before in my life.
Yeah.
I found out recently, like a couple of my friends work for like fabricators, and they're being cool and like, oh, I have this. Do you want to use this? And then they reached out about this. The really heartbreaking thing is that like places are using plastic now for like one-time displays or like convention displays, where it used to be Luan, which is wood, which is renewable, like fully fucking renewable organic materials that like even during the process of renewing this resource, you're creating clean air. And like the switch over for those major businesses to plastic is like, how could you do this? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this will be here forever. Big fucking display that like is oversized and over the top, that's for one-time use, and you're making it out of plastic. Like, I know it's because it's cheaper, but it's like so fucked that people would still choose to use that.
Sustainability must be such a big part in your job. If is it something you're interested in now? And did you sort of go into the art, caring a lot about sustainability?
No, I honestly didn't think. I was like a blind consumer. You know what I mean? Until friends of mine, pointed things out to me. Like which I appreciate that so much. Like, I know sometimes it's hard to speak up or be like, how do I have this conversation with a person that I care about that like, about this, you know what I mean? And it's like, if you love each other, just have the conversation. You know what I mean? I'm grateful for every one of those conversations that my friends have had with me. Like, and to think back now of like, oh my God, that I ever didn't think about it is just so embarrassing, you know? And like understanding, because I think there's like this thing where people are like, I don't want to waste paper. And it's like, I would rather you waste paper than use plastic for things. Use paper. It biodegrades. It comes from plants. This is cool. It's okay to do that. It's not okay to like use all this plastic or like, you know what I mean? And where can you use fabric instead of plastic? And I'm so grateful that like my fucking Facebook microphones are listening and all my ads are like, use these reusable bags. And it's like, yeah, thank you. I don't want to use the black bags for everything anymore. And I don't want to, you know, I just got a deodorant that's like, it's like a little stick that you just put in the same holder over and over again. And just sitting back and trying to imagine all the empty plastic deodorant things, like gross.
Well, I think that that's what the smart brands are doing.
Yeah. And even if it is fake, it's like, God, fucking make sure everyone at least pretends to think about it, you know, and then they'll think about it.
Well, Jennie, thanks so much for chatting. Thanks for coming on 101 Part-Time Jobs.
Thank you for inviting me. I just have to say, I love the Mighty Moon site. Is gorgeous. Y'all are great work.
Oh, thank you very much. What's going on for you in the next couple of months then? Does like, you know, doing your artwork, it certainly looks like it, but does it feel like a legit job, something that you're going to, you know, the next cake is always going to come in?
Yeah, I have some bigger projects, which is like really what I love. I do a lot of murals and stuff like that. So I got some pretty cool, exciting, kind of larger scale stuff coming down the pipe that like, I'm just really, again, this is going to sound, I don't mean to sound flippant, but like the fact that everything is canceled this year, like allows me to make plans for stuff that like I do want to do and be able to say yes, you know, so I'm pretty excited. And then the band has some cool stuff coming up too. Like things are good. I'm looking forward to things for, you know.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, you're not alone. I'm honestly quite happy to stay at home for a little while.
Right?
You know, I'm quite happy not to run into some people in town.
Oh my God. Yeah. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jennie, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
So that was Jennie from Bad Cop, Bad Cop. As I said at the start, if you dig this podcast, please share it around. Thank you so much for listening. This episode was edited by Emily Naylor.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.